Absolutely beautiful day. February in Mesa, Arizona. And we are going to go to the 3-day tournament. It's called President's Day Tournament or President's Tournament, something president. It's a 90-minute each side with 30 seconds extra every move. Quite excited about this one. I'm playing the under 1500 section, highest section I've played in so far. I'm hoping to play really well. I'm only going to be playing in 5 of the 6 games. I took a bye on the Sunday so I can go to church. But other than that, I will be hoping to come away with all the points. So I'll get a half-point bye for that game. So 5.5 is my goal. See if we can do it in the under 1500 section. It'd be really cool if we could.
Let's jump right into the games. Game 1 was against Anthony, who was rated 1480. My rating at the start of this tournament was 1211, and I was a wee bit nervous because his rating was so much higher. But I was playing in the next division up, and I wanted to prove what I could do in this division. So, game 1, my opponent started with a move e4, and I played the move c6. He goes d4 to control the center of the board with his pawns, and I play d5. This is the Caro-Kann defense. And from this point on, there are 3 general variations. You can push, 3 variations that are the most sound. You can take the pawn, and you can defend the pawn. This is called the advanced, this is called the exchange, and this can lead into the main line of the Caro-Kann or the Tartacar, which is a variation that I like to play. My opponent pushed the pawn, so this is the advanced variation, and so I pushed my c pawn, c6 to c5. This is called the Botvinnik Karl's defense. Botvinnik was a famous chess player back in the day. My opponent's next move, I didn't see very often online, but he played the move c3, and c3 makes a lot of sense because he sees when I push that I'm attacking his central pawn chain, so he wants to recapture with his pawn. But you generally don't capture immediately in the Botvinnik Karl's defense. You always want to put your knight onto c6. And now I have 2 attackers on this square. He's got 2 defenders. So nothing's going to be won here. But my opponent's next move really took me by surprise. And that was the move knight to e2. Now, apparently it is a book move, but I've never seen this, and so I was out of theory at this point. I thought for a while about the next move that I should make, and I decided to go bishop to g4, pinning the knight to the queen. So now this knight is not defending this pawn, and maybe what could happen is I take, let's say they take with queen, take, and I win a pawn. So I was thinking, this seems active, it seems good, and I definitely don't want to do the engine's top recommendation, which is put the bishop on d7, because that keeps the bishop inside my pawn chain, and the bishop's just a bad piece. But if I had put it here, this game would have resembled a French defense. But I always like to get the bishop on the outside, so I didn't see too many problems with this. I did calculate if he pushes here, we could pull back, he pushes here, I pull back to here, and my bishop's on a very active diagonal, so I thought this looked pretty good for me. He pushed, I pulled back, he attacked my bishop again, so I have to defend my bishop, I pull it back to g6. This is a very interesting opening. I did make a mistake though, and you saw that on the eval bar there. I should have actually come back to here, because instead of him attacking me here, he could have played h4 and just gone after this bishop. He could be playing here, I pull back, he plays h5, and my bishop has nowhere to go. So it could have gotten a wee bit ugly. So if he had have played h4, I would have had to move preemptively to here, and then play h6, and then get my bishop onto a little hidey hole on h7, which is still fine. It's on this diagonal, but his pawns are very advanced, and this is the way that my king wants to castle, so seemed a wee bit dangerous. However, he attacked with his knight, and I pulled back to g6, and he took with his knight, which I was happy to see because I could quickly capture, and my rook on the H file was going to be very active, has a lot of attacking ideas. He pulls his bishop out to f4, and I was very surprised to see this move because I thought if I just push e6, his bishop is never going anywhere. It can't do anything. So that's what I did. I put my pawn on e6, and now his bishop is stuck behind this pawn. So I was feeling very confident. He swings his bishop out to b5. And now I start thinking about, well, what are his big threats? What's the main thing that he can go for? And you can see here that his queen and his bishop can both line up on this knight that is pinned. And so I knew that I had to make sure I defended this knight well. So I bring my rook over to defend. He pulls his queen to a4, and now he has two pieces attacking this knight, but I do have two defenders, so I'm okay for the minute. I pull my queen up to b6 because I'm like, I just want to deal with this tension, get rid of it if possible. He pulls his bishop back to e3, and you can see already he's got an idea of taking this pawn, and I couldn't recapture with the queen because he'd win my queen with his bishop, so my bishop's going to have to recapture on c5. It looks okay, but stuff's starting to get a wee bit complicated. There's also some issues here. If he takes the bishop here and I take with the rook, then he doesn't win this pawn. But if I take with the queen, he does win this pawn. And let's say he takes here and I take and he takes and then I take and then he takes my knight and I take back with queen. He wins here, so I'd have to take with rook and my queen would be on c5 defending the a7 pawn. It all just seemed a bit weird and confusing. So I just tried to deal with all of these issues by going a6. Get rid of all these problems. He takes, I take, he moves his queen back. And my friend actually talked about this position after the game. He said he saw this when he was walking around. He was playing in the 1800 plus section, I think, or it was the open section. He's a lot better at chess than I am. And he said in this position when he went queen b3, you shouldn't have taken this. You should have actually instead probably just taken on d4 here. And if he takes back with the pawn, then maybe my bishop's coming out. If he takes back with the bishop, maybe my bishop's coming to c5. So it looked very interesting. Wasn't quite sure if I should take this, but I thought, let's just avoid complications and take this piece because I at least get to double his pawns, which is what happened. Then I took this pawn on d4. He recaptured with the bishop. I bring my bishop out, and he takes, I take, and he pulls his knight out to d2. Now, you can see in this position, we have equal pieces. I have doubled pawns on the g file. He has doubled pawns on the b file. His rook's kind of active. My rook's kind of active. So it does look very even, but I felt quite good about it. I thought that I could get attacking quicker than he could. So I bring my knight out to e7. He castles. I bring my knight over to c6, attacking this pawn. He attacks my rook, so I have to move the rook to the only square that it can go to. And then he defends this pawn that I was attacking with my knight. I push into the center. And I'm not sure if this was correct. Maybe I should have played the king up and brought my rook over to defend that pawn before I pushed. But here he goes knight to e4, and I can see he's eyeing a very nasty square that would check my king and win my rook. So I have to move my king. I don't want to get checked. He jumps into that square anyway, attacking my rook. And so I only have two squares that I can go to. I can come back to b6, or I can go over to d5. And d5 would have been a blunder. So if I go here, you can see he wins this pawn. And I'm having to deal with this knight in my territory, which I didn't want to have to do. So instead of going to d4, we went rook to b6. And here he brings his other rook over to attack this pawn. Maybe he's got ideas of pushing and attacking here and then winning this or something. I'm not entirely sure. But here I thought, let's try to remove the defender of this knight. If I can get rid of this pawn, then I can win the knight. He jumped his knight back to attack my rook again, and so I have to pull it back up again. And here he went knight to a5, a move that I wasn't expecting. The engine says here that we are completely equal, and I felt like in the game I had a slight advantage, but sometimes you don't know if it's equal or you have an advantage. But I was feeling pretty good here because I realized that if I take this knight and he takes with his rook, then I could capture, and then capture this pawn. He'd recapture, and he'd have an isolated pawn on the C file and an isolated pawn on the A file. I spent quite a bit of time on this move considering to capture, and I thought if he does take with his pawn, we can capture this one, and we're in on him, and maybe we're looking down here at this side of the board. So I was feeling very confident when he took, he took here on f6, which I think was a mistake because this just allows me to undouble. And then he recaptured my rook back. I take the pawn on c3, and he takes, and I have these two isolated pawns, which is what I was hoping for. Now the engine still says this is completely equal. Rook and pawn endgames are often very equal, but we do start to turn this game around, which is very interesting. Rook c8, rook b1, attacking my b7 pawn. I defend, he defends. I pull my king into the action. I want to get it close, but this position I really considered for a long time. Rook checks here. If I move up, he wins this pawn. If rook checks here and I move up here, he doesn't win this one, but maybe he can throw in a check here. I would take, then maybe he'd win this one. So it was very difficult to calculate all this, but he moved his king. I pulled my king up, and I was very worried about this move, attacking here, coming here. Just things looked pretty ugly. Maybe I take with rook, but then he wins this one. And so he moves his king in again. And I had a long think here, and I finally decided to go with the move b5. And apparently b5 is not so good. It is a sacrifice of a pawn that doesn't have the compensation that I need. He captured with en passant, and I went rook b7. I thought this looked really good because I can bring my king here, I can get this, and I can fix my backwards pawn, which was really the whole issue with my position. He pulls his king over, I pull my king over, he moves his pawn forwards, which I thought was a mistake. Here I was thinking if he goes h4, g4, and starts pushing here, I'm going to be in big trouble. But he pushed his pawn to c4, and I took. The position's back to equal. He moves his rook over, I move in, he pulls back, and I find this beautiful move, rook d6 check. He can't protect the pawn anymore. He has to move to one of these squares, and if he goes to one of these squares, I'm going to be able to win the pawn. So he pulls back. A very odd move. I wasn't sure why he was coming back to here. Maybe he thought if he went here, I could come to d2 and attack these pawns. That wasn't even in my mind. I was just thinking I'm going to grab this pawn and then come back here and try to promote this one. And the reason this wasn't in my mind was because I want to stay close to the a6 pawn. And if I come here, he can always grab this and start getting counterplay. I take the pawn. Apparently a big mess. Here, what I should have done is a5 and just start walking this pawn up the board. I guess when you are in these positions, you can always try to push your pawns. I think in endgames, something I need to get better at is just pushing pawns. I take, he goes g4, and this position, I made a miscalculation. I played the move g5, and I thought if he captures and I capture, and he brings his rook here, I can just play rook d5, attacking this pawn and his rook. But I forgot that he could take on a6, and this whole calculation was not good by me, but this is what happens. And I realize at this point I have to keep my rook here on d6, defending the pawns. So instead I'm just going to move my king over to attack this, and he's going to win a pawn. So I wasn't feeling so confident when he took this pawn. It's a 2-on-2 now. When I did have an advantage, I thought I had an extra pawn. But I start doing what I should have been doing a while ago. I push e5. He moves his rook over to attack my pawn on e6, tie down my rook, but also make room for his pawn to start promoting and get a queen. I push. He pushes. I push. He attacks my king. I move up because this is where I want my king. I want to protect the a1 square. So this seemed like a good move for me. He pulls his rook over to g4. And here I had a very long think. And honestly, the answer to this whole problem is extremely simple. And I wish I just went with my gut. I should have played the rook to a6. Because if I go rook a6, then I can push this pawn and it can never be taken. Yes, he has a check. Yes, I come here. He'd win. Then I would win. And I would have a rook ready to attack these two pawns that are definitely going to fall. If I have a rook here, I can just come here and eat this one if this is the one promoting. And if this one promotes, then I can just, pull my rook here and attack it. But I didn't. I pushed the pawn instead. He pulls back to g1. I have another long think here. Do you play king b2 and then promote? Do you go rook c6 and block the rook? Do you push the pawn and just go after this? What do you do in this position? Well, there's only one really good move, and that is rook a6, and I didn't find it. I pulled the king up to b2. He goes h4. I promote to a queen. He captures my queen. I take his rook, and here he plays king to e3. Now, in this position, I really could not find the correct move, but I do know that if you have pawns trying to promote, often you need to get behind them and attack from the back. And this is something I forgot, and instead I found a beautiful draw, which is not something I wanted to find, but I could have played the move rook d1. If he pushes, we can just go rook g1 and attack this pawn. If he wants to protect this pawn, he could move his king, but then we could check with e5, and if he takes me, I win his pawn, and we're going to be able to stop this one. And if he moves forwards here, we can go e4 and promote our own. So he's going to have to take this guy. We're going to be able to take here, and if he pushes, we can just go here, and we're going to win the pawn. So I didn't calculate well again for the second time, but I find this beautiful draw. We push the pawn, and I check. He wins my pawn. I take his pawn, and here the game ends, where he takes my rook on g6, and the game is drawn. I was feeling kind of bittersweet about this. The fact that I was able to draw a 1480 gave me a lot of confidence, and I was thankful. However, if you look at the review of this game, you'll see there was really no opportunity for my opponent to get a win, and I had several opportunities to win, so I should have come away with a victory. I was feeling a wee bit bummed. But a draw is a draw, it's not a loss. We play for two results, draws and wins, and we got a draw. So this was game one, and my elo is going to go up quite a bit if I draw someone who's 200 points higher than me. So overall, not the end of the world. Actually, he was like 250 points higher than me, which is kind of crazy, even more than that. So the end of the day, it was fine. In the review, the engine says that he played with an 88% and I played with an 88%. So the game was very close. We both played quite good chess, but I had several missed opportunities to win. Let's jump in to game two. In game two, we got to play against Melody again. She's been in almost every single tournament recap video I've done. She's a very sharp player. She spots a lot of things, and she's been really difficult for me to get victories against. She was, however, rated a wee bit lower in this tournament, 1158. She was up in the 1300s, and I guess she had a few bad tournaments, but I felt like this was going to be a tough matchup, even though I had the white pieces. Last time I played her when I had the white pieces, I played the English opening, and we both had like a 95% accurate game. Just very solid from her. But this game I was going to be playing the Jabava, and I was feeling pretty confident. I played d4. She goes d5, knight c3, knight f6, bishop f4, bishop f5. And always online against bishop f5, I've been going for the Jabava London pawn storm. But in the future, I'm not going to be playing this f3 move against every single setup. It's okay against a sort of Slav, this sort of triangle setup that people often go for with the bishop on the outside. But against just this typical quick setup here, f3 is not actually the strongest. It's better to go e3 and then knight f3 and get your knight onto e5 and push the g4 pawn. This has been something that I've been kind of against playing because certain international masters, Alex Benzea, always suggests going f3, but I think that's just because he says it's simple for people to learn. But I don't want to learn just the simple things. I want to learn the most correct thing possible. And I think switching this up, going e3 and knight f3 in the future is what I'm going to be doing. Anyway, all that aside, I did go f3. She plays c5 and I go g4, attacking the bishop. She moves back. I keep going for this attack. She creates a little hidey hole for her bishop, and I play e3 to defend the pawn on d4. She pushes c4. I pull my queen over to e2, which is a very strange move, but I realized I didn't capture here, and because I didn't capture, now I can't play bishop to d3, which is the typical idea, what I want to go for against a bishop on g6. So her bishop's actually quite powerful, and mine's a piece of junk, which I wasn't happy with. She pulls her knight into the game. I go king f2. Now, this looks kind of strange, but I know often in the Jabava London, you can just get your king behind these pawns and advance them with your king. Something I thought I'd go for, but I wasn't feeling good about my position at all because this bishop is a piece of junk. When she pulls her knight out to c6, often you want to look at your knight jumping here to get cool checks and winning rooks. But here she could just play the queen. So if the knight comes here, queen a5, and she's tempoing my knight, and my knight would have to go back. So I knew I couldn't do that. So yeah, the move we play instead is king f2, common idea in the Jabava. And she goes a6, stopping my knight jumping in, which is what I probably would have wanted to go for now that my king wasn't going to be checked. I go knight h3, defending this bishop. She goes e6, getting her bishop ready to get developed to a square. And I play g5. g5 attacks this knight and this pawn. So she captured. I recaptured with my bishop, pinning this knight so it can't move, or else I win the queen. She gets out of the pin by going bishop e7. I move in with my knight, knight to f4, attacking this bishop, the piece that I want to get rid of. She moves it and instead looks at my pawn on f3. I was starting to get a wee bit nervous. I didn't know quite how to proceed here. How do I improve my bishop? I just didn't see a great way to do it. So I thought maybe we can break open here and maybe my bishop can look down this way. I mean, there's no good square for it to land on because I just get eaten. But it's better than it being on f1 being a piece of junk. So I go b3. She takes, I take. She moves her rook to c8. Then I saw the move bishop h3. And the reason I went for this was because I saw we could take here, they take, and then we could win this pawn because they can't take me back because I win the rook. Or maybe they could take me back and they win my knight and they win my bishop, all for a rook. So this plan of mine wasn't so solid. They also have a cool tactic here. They could have taken on d4 and attacked my knight, which is something I completely missed. But she didn't spot it. She moves her rook out of the pin so that this piece isn't pinned anymore. But I take the pawn anyway, which I thought was a very interesting move because look at it. The only piece she can capture with is this one. And if she does, knight comes here, hitting queen and rook. Would be beautiful. The game's in a very equal position here. But when I took, she instead found the move knight takes d4. I took back. She took my knight. I took her bishop because there was 2 pieces looking here. Game's very ugly right now. She took my knight back. I took the bishop on e7. It's just capture, capture, capture. And this is a mistake because actually she could go king takes e7, attacking my bishop. I thought if king here, then maybe we have discoveries, you know, with the queen. But none of them really work. She took instead with her queen. I took the pawn and she swapped the queens off. And I suppose the reason she did this was because she saw this beautiful move, knight to f4, attacking my king and my bishop, which is what she went for. I moved my king to d2 to attack the rook, but she can defend the rook and take my bishop. But I saw here I could actually put the rook on e1, checking the king. King moves, we can come up to e5, ready to attack this piece. She moved up to protect her knight, but we take the knight anyway, because when she recaptures, we can take the rook, because the knight's the only defender of the rook. So this is the position we got to. She starts checking me. I move over. She moves her rook up. I go onto the open file here, attacking this pawn. She moves forwards. I move up because if she takes here, we win it back, which is what she did. We win back the pawn. And she goes king to e7. And basically, I guess the issue with her moves here is she's just making her king worse. She's moving backwards constantly here. And she really needs to have her king closer to the center of the board. I move over to c5 and she takes, I take. Now, I was told after the game by my friend, anytime you're a pawn up, your position's completely winning in a king and pawn endgame. Even when it's a side pawn, it's just winning. But I wasn't quite sure if I was going to be able to make progress here, and I thought maybe my advantage isn't as good as it was. You can see the engine says I'm clearly ahead. But it's just good to know. Spend the time to find the win. Because what happened here was very sad. I just couldn't figure a way to make progress. I thought if I come here, they can come here and eat this and promote. And then I was counting 1, 1, e4, take, b5, take, king here, c6, take, here, he checks me, and I still don't have a pawn. She. So I was really worried here. So I just went a4, and here I decided to give up my pawns to try to take this one and promote on a square where I could check the king. And the reason I knew that I could check the king was because after she moves, I move, she takes, I take, and I saw if she gets to this square, we can check here. King up, she goes b5, I take, she takes, and I saw I had a check, but yeah, I calculated it wrong. My position was completely winning, and I shouldn't have given up the position with my moving my king to the wrong side of the board. Lesson learned. This game ended in a draw. And I was a wee bit bittersweet, depressed, kind of sad. Actually, more sad on this one because her rating was lower than mine. And it's never good to draw someone lower rated. I actually thought at the time that our rating was still in the 1300s, so I wasn't feeling so bad. But if I'd known her rating was lower, then I was really kicking myself. And starting off a tournament with 2 draws was not how I wanted to start the tournament. I wanted to start with 2 wins. But she played well. She got the draw. And yeah, I got to be better in my king and pawn endgames. Something I need to use my time and calculate better. I had a lot of time left. Just what it was. The engine gave this game myself playing with an 85.5 and her playing with an 83.8. So should have had this one. Had a big opportunity to win, but I didn't find it. Let's jump in to game 4. Game 3, we took a bye. Game 4, 5, and 6 I played, and game 4 was one of the most interesting games I think I've played on this whole over the board series. It was weird. Let me show you. I have half a mind to show you guys this game without the analysis on the side, so you don't know who's winning or losing. In fact, I will, because it's quite surprising, and I just want to show you what I'm thinking. So let me just cut that off real quick. All right. My opponent played d4. We played f5. The Dutch, he played c4, and I played knight f6. My opponent's name was David, and he was an 1164. And already from move 2, he was thinking like crazy. I realized that I could really punish him on the clock. And I actually wrote on my score sheet how much time he had for each move. But he started to get seriously pressured under time. And I think the Dutch is a great opening for people to learn, because your opponents often haven't seen it. He played knight c3. I played e6. He played knight f3. And I played bishop to e7. So all of these moves are typical. I know exactly what I'm doing. And he's making the correct responses, but he was already using a ton of time. He goes bishop d2, a move that I kind of questioned. And it looked strange, but I thought, let's just keep playing my good, typical Dutch moves. So I castle. He plays e3. I play d6. I'm sorry, I moved quickly there. And he goes bishop e2. So I was starting to feel pretty good. All these moves are good for me. And the whole idea in the Dutch is to be able to play the pawn to e5. If you can play the pawn to e5, then you're going to have these two pawns together that can help and assist in the kingside attack. So I was looking at his pieces, and I see he has two pieces defending e5. So I only have one defender of e5, so I need to rectify that. I put my knight into the center. He castles. I take off this knight. He takes, and now I've made available a square for my bishop, so that my bishop can defend e5. And also, when I move the bishop, I can move the queen to defend e5. So we start with the queen. He moves his rook. I was like, that's a weird move. He doesn't even care about e5. Yes, he has 3 defenders, but it doesn't really seem like he knows what to think or how to attack or what to go for. So I bring my knight to d7, defending e5. He pushes his pawn. I move my bishop to defend e5. And now I have a bishop, a pawn, a knight, and a queen all defending e5. So I'm ready to make this push. He pulls his knight back. And I was just like scratching my head a wee bit. What is this move? What does it do for him? And you're probably all thinking, okay, I wonder what the analysis is saying about the position. Clearly looks like Owen's winning. We'll have a look here. I go e5. He goes f3. What is this move? What is going on here? Doesn't he want to take on e5? Doesn't he want to make this bishop solid? Because right now the bishop's looking at a pawn. This bishop is now looking at a pawn. His bishops are both bad. This position has to be winning for Owen. I go f4. I thought maybe we can break open here. And if he takes here, then I can take, and my queen's getting active in here looking at pieces. I thought this looks kind of interesting. He pushes e4. So now I was like, this position is clearly winning for me. Look at the pawns. His bishop's stuck. His bishop's stuck. This is looking good. I go queen to g6, ready to attack down this side. My bishops are on this side of the pawn chain, and they're both ready to assist in this attack. My pawn on f4 is going to be deadly for him to deal with. He goes d5? Like, that is just so weird. Now he has no chance of breaking this bishop out. This whole pawn structure is solid. It's a brick wall. Nobody's getting through it. His bishops are both terrible. Now you're sitting there thinking, like, I want to know what the engine's analysis of this position is. And I'll show you guys after the game. But I was feeling so confident. Bishop to h4. Knight to d3. Because I'm attacking it? Not really sure. Knight to f6. So my knight's coming in. And all my pieces are joining the fight. I have h3 next because he can't take because he's pinned. And all my pieces are just coming alive. He pulls his knight back to f2 to defend. And I think I'll just take this off. And now, how's he stopping this? How's he stopping this piece? How's he stopping h5, h4? I'm just going to attack like crazy. h5 is what we start with. He moves his king over to not be pinned anymore. I move my king up to f7, thinking, okay, I'll bring the rook over to h8. We are going to just attack with everything. Where's his counterplay? Does he have any counterplay? Can he do anything with these pieces? Doesn't really look that good for him. He goes c5. I move my queen over because I'm thinking, let's get both of these pieces lined up here. Let's push this one. And if we get to h3 and then he pushes here, we can take here, here. And then we got a pawn on h2. And yeah, things just look good. I also have g5, g5, g4. I can break open here. Things are looking amazing. He takes on d6. I recapture. And he puts his bishop on b4, targeting my pawn. Here I started to think, okay, now finally his pieces are getting a wee bit more active. His rook's getting active. His bishop's getting active. And if we go back to here, the move I really should probably play, I mean, the engine's telling me h6 or h7 is the best, but probably b6. Because b6, when he plays here, we can just capture it, and he doesn't have a way in, and this pawn is solid, and this is going to be kind of difficult for him to attack, probably. I even have the knight back here, or the rook up to defend here, so I was feeling okay about this, but this didn't happen. In this position, I go king e7 to defend my pawn. He checks me, I defend, and he pulls his bishop back to here. Like, what is this move? What's it doing? It's looking at the pawns again. This position has to be good for me. I go g5. He goes g3. I move my king over here to attack his rook. He defends his rook. And now I can block the defense by playing knight to c5. He takes. I take. He takes with his queen. And I just put the bishop on d7, ready to defend with my rook on c8. Feeling very confident, knowing that I have a good attack. I'm still attacking with these pawns. Both of my rooks are going to be active down these files. Things are looking good. He brings his bishop to b4, targeting this rook. So I have to defend. And I think if I put the rook on f7, he's never checking me here. He's never checking me here. So I'm feeling so confident. He pushes his pawn to d6. Another weird move because they're just looking at a pawn. Yeah, he's attacking here, but who cares? Rook to c8. They take my pawn. Bishop to h3. Apparently a blunder. I would never have said this was a blunder. Like, in all my playing chess, how is that a blunder? And the reason it's a blunder is apparently he's got bishop to c4 attacking my rook. And then what's going to happen with my rook? Not entirely sure. It says the best move for me is just to give it up. But it didn't really seem all that strong if his bishop comes here. I didn't see any follow-up. So, like, let's say here, and let's say I play back here. Well, then he's got d2, looking at this pawn, and he's coming down here. And my pieces are not attacking. I have no way in, and his pieces are all attacking. However, like I said at the start of the game, his time usage was really bad. And at this point in the game, after my blunder, he was just running low. He moves his king to g1. I check. He has to block. I move my queen to f6. He swaps off. And here, They're trying to attack my rook because my rook's pinning the bishop. I'm attacking the bishop. Things are looking ugly for them. So I just move the rook. They take the pawn on f4, and I take the bishop, because if I take the bishop, they have to recapture with the rook. We win a bishop, which is what happens. And here, I double my rooks here, ready to check, check, king back, checkmate. Feeling very confident. Game looks like it's won. My opponent resigned. Now you want to see the analysis and see what actually was going on in this game. I'll just show you super fast. All the way back here, when this pawn wall was happening, I have about a 1 point advantage, which is good. And I knew I was winning. But moving the knight to f6 was the problem. And after moving my knight to f6, the game's basically even. And I never get any winning chances. And in fact, he's completely winning all the way until right after that h3 blunder, and he moves his king. He's completely winning, which is a shock to me because I felt so good about this position. I should have instead just moved the rook to f6, and then I can use a rook to do the attack as well, instead of a knight here that never really did anything for me. So that was the mistake. But if I just flick through the moves here, you'll see he's up half a point. Now he's up 1.3. He's up 1.7. And now he opens up the position. Here, I move my king over. He's up basically a whole minor piece. He checks. And when I defend here, he's basically a minor piece and nearly a pawn. Pulling back was a mistake. But the position was so strong for him here. Queen here was actually the best move, which I'm shocked by. You would have thought like bringing the rook back was the best move. But even here, after he sacks the exchange, he's still completely winning. 1.44 for him. But he just doesn't find the correct moves. And just shocking, like here, 1.79 for him. And finally, I'm in a winning position. And I play most of the best moves after this point. But I was shocked that I had such a cool attack here, but it just goes to show you, when you attack, you need to use the right pieces. I should have used this rook on f6, g6, not a knight on f6 that never had any chance of coming into the position. So yeah, the killer Dutch nearly killed me. This was game 4. I was sitting at the tournament with 2 draws and a win, feeling okay. We also had a half point bye. So after 4 games, I was on a total of 2.5 points, which was pretty good. But I was hopeful for day 3. And day 3, I have 2 very exciting games. So let me show you game number 5, which was very exciting. In game 4, David played with a 77% accuracy, and I played with an 84.2. So it was one of our more accurate games of the tournament so far. But yeah, he was winning for the majority of it. Let's jump into game 5. I know a few games ago when I played against Melody, we said that going f3 for the pawn storm is only correct against the Slav setup, but I hadn't studied my course yet. My opponent does this weird sort of maneuver into the Slav. They did a weird move order, and I probably could have played e4 early, but I didn't. But they go bishop f5, and so here I really should do what I did in the previous game, but after having just played Melody and been scarred by the bad bishop that I had, and what a terrible opening it was, I decide to play the knight to f3, which is the other variation. The reason knight f3 works is because when you get the knight to e5, you have a knight defending g4 and a queen defending g4, and so you can actually play the pawn to g4. So 2 pieces defending g4. She brings her knight into the position. I'm sorry, not she. He. This boy was a young boy. Rating of 1392. Was a wee bit nervous. His name was Saikavan or something like that. Indian boy. And here I play g4. They pull the bishop back. I go h4. And here my opponent had to have a really long think. Now apparently, the only move that works for my opponent is a kind of difficult move to spot. Queen to b6. You generally don't want to move your queen early. And why would you move your queen here when it looks like you're just getting your bishop trapped? Bishop here, we can go here. it just looks terrible to put the queen here. And I don't think anyone is going to play this move. So they do the next move that they think, h6 or h5, just to give their bishop a retreat square. This move gives me a plus 2.5, which is crazy. Well, plus 2.41. And I knew my position was good because we can take that bishop off, double his pawns, and then attack the knight. The knight has to jump back, and now I move the queen in to attack the pawn. My position's dominating. They go knight to e7, and I was moving fairly quickly here. I'm up basically a whole minor piece, and this is where I need to slow down because there's a lot of different moves I could go for here. I could play f3 and play e4 and maybe break open. I could castle, get the rook here, and things are just going to be looking very good for me. But instead, I play this stupid move, which basically puts the game back to almost even. And the reason this move's so stupid is I was thinking, let's remove the defender and take the pawn. But I forgot that they can just move the knight. And now they don't need a defender because the knight's in the way. So there's always two ways you can defend a piece. You can defend by guarding it, or you can defend by blocking the attack. And I forgot about looking at the blocking the attack. So here, my bishop's under attack, and I don't have a way in anymore. And so we just take off the bishops. They take back with the knight. My position's doing okay here because they have doubled pawns. And honestly, this is the whole way into this game for me. You're going to see these doubled pawns are what I have to really target. But I made it a big time fight for myself because I didn't slow down in the opening. Slow down in the openings so that you don't have to fight like I fight in this game. This was crazy. Pawn to e4. They take, I take, they take a pawn for free. I put my rook on d1. They take my queen, I take the queen back, and they move their rook to d8. Rooks come off, and this is the position we're in. I have a bishop, which is an imbalance because they have two knights. I have a knight and a bishop, so I know my bishop's going to be fairly strong, but they have doubled pawns, so I know that maybe there's a chance for me to get an advantage in this game. I pull my bishop out to c4, attacking this pawn, immobilizing this knight. It can't move because I take a pawn for free. So they move their king up to e7 to defend that pawn. I pull my knight back. Now you might look at this move and think this is very strange, but why am I doing this? Well, if you look at the position and you say, what piece do I need to improve? You'd say the rook, but the rook can't move. The rook can't come anywhere because this pawn needs to be defended. So I realized this knight needs to be on f3 to defend that pawn, and then I can move my rook. So I play it back, they move their knight, and I put my knight on f3, defending this pawn, and now my rook is going to be able to move. So I'm just trying to maneuver my pieces onto better squares. They bring their rook to d8, I castle, knight to b6, attacking my bishop. So I just pull the bishop back, still looking at this pawn, thinking I can bring the rook over here and attack this pawn with two pieces. They come knight to d5. I go rook to e1, attacking this square. And here they pull back to c7, defending the pawn. So the pawn is defended by two pieces. So what am I going to attack here? I pull the rook up to e4, looking at this pawn on h4, defending it so that my knight can develop onto this square and take this pawn on g6. If I can win that pawn on g6, then I'm going to be feeling good. I'll be up a pawn, and I need the rook on e4 to defend. They pull back to d6. They could have played the move rook d1, forcing my king up, and then maybe pulling over here to b1 and eating this pawn or something like that. I'm not entirely sure. But they pull their knight back, and I pull back to e1. They go all the way back to f7, attacking this pawn, but maybe thinking of defending this one. In this position, I have a think, and I find a really nice idea. Pawn to c3. And the reason I play pawn to c3 is I want to move this bishop But I don't want to keep attacking this pawn because he's got it well defended. I want to move the bishop here to attack this pawn because there's no piece defending it. So I saw if we go c3, then we can go bishop c2. They push c5, and I think he was surprised when I played this move because he didn't realize what I was going to be attacking. And so the only way for him to defend this pawn on g6 is putting the knight in the corner, which looks terrible for him. We have one attacker on this pawn, so let's get another attacker. I put the knight on e5, 2 pieces attacking this pawn. How's he going to defend it? He plays a6, and then I realize, hold up, if I take this pawn, and then he takes me, and then I take him, he can just defend this pawn, and I'm not able to get it, and this position looks fairly even. Maybe I should have gone for this. The engine kind of likes this, but I didn't like the look of it. I realized also that after having played the bishop back here, he could have moved the rook down to d2, attacking my bishop, maybe forcing it to move and then taking on b2, which I quickly rectified by going rook to e2, making sure that he doesn't attack me. He plays a5. I play a4 just to stop any funny business. And he puts his knight on d5. So I still have 2 pieces attacking here, but I still don't like taking here because the rook can come here and defend this square, and I didn't see a way in. So I pulled the rook up. And the reason I pulled the rook up was because I saw the only way for this knight that's been placed on d5 to get into play is by coming over here to f4. He goes rook to f8, and I play the king up so that the rook can't come in and do what it wants to do. Like, let's say rook here, we could just take, and now my king is quite close. I can go g3, defend this pawn, and my king is close to the fight. And yeah, they go d5, but now maybe I can take here, or I could even take here, and now I'm winning this pawn. So I was feeling pretty good here. They go knight f4. I pull the king up. Now in this position, I see that I can play the move c4. If I play c4, the knight retreats, and then I can put my rook on f4, swap these rooks off, and finally I can come in here and win both the pawns. That was my goal. I go c4. He plays the move knight to b4, and I didn't realize, oh, he's actually attacking my bishop, so I have to pull my bishop back, and now he can reroute his knight to this square, and what that means is I can't play here because he takes my knight for free. And I can't move the knight because he takes my knight for free. And so I'm just one tempo too late. But I find this move, knight to d3. I could have taken and doubled his pawns. I thought about it for a while, but I didn't do it because it seemed very drawish. I play the knight back. He plays b6. And then I reroute this way because now we're attacking. And we're attacking, and if I can swap off the rooks, we're going to be good. But I realized, oh, now I can't swap off the rooks, but we are attacking this square twice. He pushes the pawn. I can't take it because his knight takes me. I jump in with a check. He pulls his king up. And here I'm thinking, well, how do we get into the position more? Let's play f4. f4 means his pawn attacks my king, but I can take it off with my knight. And now I am attacking this square again. I'm ready to check here and maybe win this pawn. He blocks everything by putting his knight into the middle. And so I just play b3, try to play solid. He pulls his rook up, and I pull my rook back, trying to make room for my bishop to get into the position. I see this square, and I'm like, maybe my bishop is better placed on this square. Always try to look for ways to improve your pieces. They go rook b7. I pull my bishop in. They go back. I go bishop d5, and they go rook to d8. How would you guys win anything from this position? He's got 2 defenders on this pawn. The only way for me to win this pawn is to have 3 attackers on it, and I really can't get an attacker on it. It's just impossible. So here, I move my knight in to attack the pawn and attack the rook. They pull their rook up to d7. I pull my king in because I'm like, his king's active. My king needs to be active too. They check me. I pull into the position. They move their rook to d7. And here I pull my rook back to e2, thinking I can get onto this open file. I can't do it if I come onto f3 here, because the knight's holding that square. They go rook to f7, and here I make a big blunder, which my opponent didn't see. And my opponent offered draws for me maybe 5 or 6 times in this game. Probably already they've offered like 3 draws because they felt like they were losing, and indeed they were losing. But I play knight to d8, attacking the rook and looking at maybe jumping to this square because the bishop's defending it. I can attack the king and force the king away somewhere, and then maybe I can win this knight. That's what I'm thinking. They play the best move, rook to e7, and I have to play back. And here what they can do, and I don't know why they didn't see it, they could have just captured, and they have 2 knights and I have a rook, and my position is big time losing. They don't capture though. They play rook f7. I play down to e1, thinking I need to make a waiting move to get this rook off the f file. If he gets off the f file, then we could take the f file and be winning. They come back to d7. I move my king to e3. Knight to f8. King to d3. Just trying to get out of danger, but also not wanting to be too far away from the action. I want to be close to the middle of the board, so that's why I played e3. The reason this is bad for me is because they can just play rook e7 and again swap off both of these pieces for the rook. But even better, they could go here and then take with the knight. And if I take with the bishop, then they take for free. They just win a piece. They take with the wrong piece. They don't pin. They just take. I capture with check. I take a pawn. I go in for all the kills. And here they check me a bunch. But my king can run and hide on a3. And I'm able to take the knight because the knight had no square to jump to. They check. I go to a3. They push h3. I pull the rook up to h6. And it was in this position that my opponent resigned. What a hard game to win. And you can see that game went back and forth. My opponent offered draws several times, which I didn't want to take because I knew that I could push it and get a win. And it seemed like I was winning. But actually, I fell into tactical issues and I need to be way more careful than I've been. That's not good. And I could have easily lost this game. But I was very thankful that I was able to get a win. We still haven't lost a single game in this tournament, and we were going in to game 6, which was the most exciting game of the entire tournament. I think you guys are gonna love it. This game we played with a rating of 75.1 and our opponent played with a 72.9. Stick around for this last game. I know this video is long, but you really are going to enjoy this final game in this whole chess tournament and hear about what happens to my rating. Here we go, game 6. My opponent in this final game was named Ethan, and he was a 1367. This game was exciting. He plays d4. I play f5. We've already played the Dutch in the previous day, and I knew, because I'd analyzed that game already, what my mistakes were, so I was feeling more confident about my Dutch, and I wasn't going to fall into those same mistakes of placing my knight on f6 instead of my rook. He plays knight f3, I go knight f6, pawn comes up, bishop out, knight to d2, and we castle. Typical opening moves. They play the pawn to b3, so obviously they want to fianchetto this bishop on this diagonal, but they have a pawn they're looking at, so I know that I'm going to probably be able to block things up for them so that their pieces are less active. I go d6. Maybe it would have been better for me to play a stonewall structure and play d5, because then the bishop, when it comes here, is never looking out. However, d5, they could maybe get the bishop here on a3. They could just go a4, bishop a3, and the rook's looking at the bishop, so the bishop's defended, and could maybe swap off my dark squared bishop. But I play d6. They go bishop b2. queen e8, queen e2, and I play here the move e5, which is an odd looking move. But I realize because this is a fianchettoed side, what you can do is you can actually attack it with a pawn, or we can bring the knight into this square, and this pawn is looking very weak, and maybe we can get some attack going on this side of the board. They go a4, maybe enabling this bishop to look on this diagonal. I play knight c6, and they play the bishop to c4. Now, I have basically blitzed out all these moves, and I wasn't thinking a whole lot. My opponent plays, after I go knight b4, they play the knight back to f1, and I was thinking this is very strange, but it's probably one of the main ways that they can defend this square, because I was looking at forking both of these pieces. I go b6, ready to fianchetto my own bishop, and they play knight to g3. And when they played knight to g3, I thought, okay, he just wants to castle. But actually, he's got some tactics already, and I missed him. And I just quickly played bishop b7. Now, you're probably already seeing what's wrong with bishop b7. I don't know if it was because this was game 6 of the tournament and I was tired, but I just didn't see this. They can take this pawn. It's not defended. They can take it with check, but they can also take this pawn because I can't recapture. And so this is what they do. Would have been much better if they just took the pawn with check, though. I push d5, and they take off my dark squared bishop, so my queen has to come to e7, and I'm a little bummed because I know my position is now losing. They pull their their bishop back to d3, and here I see, okay, I'm not giving up. There's some opportunities. I take, they take, and here I see I can attack the queen. Where's the queen going? The queen has to retreat. It can't come to these squares, so it's going to have to stay somewhere over here. It can't go to these squares, so it's going to go to one of these 3 squares. Here, here, or here. And I know that if it goes to this one or this one, the knight can come in and attack it. So really it needs to pull back to d1. Really the only good move for it. Apparently, the best move here for them is to go bishop a3, attacking my queen, which is something I don't think either of us saw. But they pull back and they go queen d2, so I can attack the queen. And they pull back again, and now I have a way into the position, and I'm feeling very confident all of a sudden. It's surprising how quickly chess games can turn around. They play c3, so now this pawn is weak. I take it. They attack my queen. I pull back to the only square I can go to, and they pull the queen up to c2. Now, it was in this position that I saw things could get very, very, very ugly. And here I play the pawn to g5, thinking I can go g4, attacking this knight. But what I missed was my opponent can actually put the knight here, maybe, and it looks like my queen's getting trapped. So if the knight comes here to e5, what square am I going to put my queen on? I can't come here, here, or here. I can't come here or here. I can't go here because of the pawn. I can't go back here because of the pawn. I can't go here because of this pawn. And I can't come to this square. So it looks like he's just trapping me completely. But after I moved this pawn, I only saw this, but then I started to think, okay, maybe I can take on f2. And f2 looks pretty crazy. So knight here, f2, attacking the queen. Well, can they not just take my rook? Then I take their queen, and then they take my queen, and then I take their rook, and it just looked very complicated. And they just play this move, which I was really surprised about. But let's have a look. If they had played this, I can take, and I'm actually completely winning. They capture, and here I can take their queen. They take my queen. Instead of taking here or taking here, I can go knight d3, getting my knight out of danger. And then when the king moves, I could take this one or this one. And it's better to take this one because then I'm not losing a piece. So I could just come here. And you can see this position looks really wacky. He's up a whole point of material. But how is he going to get out of this danger? It looks kind of crazy. Rook to b1 is his best move to defend this piece. And then I have rook f8. And I'm just coming in here and I'm going to be able to win this bishop. They can't defend with this rook. So that's a lot to calculate. And I would have had to go down that line. But I'm pretty sure I would have found all those moves because it's a classical game and you got loads of time. So I probably would have been okay. I don't know if he calculated any of that or even saw that my queen might have been trapped. But thankfully it wasn't going to work. So the move that they did instead was rook g1. So I was feeling a bit more relaxed here. And I play my queen to d3 because I don't want to have to deal with a trapped queen. Here they play knight to e5 now, and I have to move my bishop because if I don't, they're going to capture it for free. But actually, I should have just captured this pawn, looking at their bishop, not worried about this one. If I capture here and they take this one, then I can actually go rook to d2, getting rid of this piece and then winning their bishop. Something I didn't consider. However, none of that happened. They moved here. I pulled my bishop back. Game is completely even. They attack my knight. My knight pulls back. And here I attack the bishop and the rook. I really thought my opponent was going to go rook a2 to defend the bishop. But they just moved their bishop. And so I took the rook for free. I was like, wow, I'm completely winning. How many pawns do we both have? He's got 7. I've got 7. He's got a rook, I've got a rook, he's got a bishop, and I've got a rook. So I'm actually up 2 points of material. The engine gives us a -3 for me. So I'm actually winning by like a whole minor piece. And I proceed to make the rest of the game very difficult for myself. But wait for the ending, lads, because this is one of the most beautiful endings in a chess game you've ever seen. And I'll show you why. We move over to c8 to push the c pawn. We got to defend this pawn. They move their king. We attack the bishop. Bishop goes back. We pull over to the b file. They pull over to the b file. We play c5 because we can take here and the rooks defend each other. I take the pawn. They take the pawn. Here I pull my rook in. They pull their bishop over just to maybe get it to a more active square, but also attack my rook. I double my rooks. They pull up. And here what I should have done is put my rook onto c6 because that defends this pawn. But this is the first start of me being sloppy. I take this pawn and they take a pawn. I didn't have to give them this pawn. I could have just slowly moved up and then taken the pawn. It's just what it is. I take, they take, I move my rook up to a2, attacking these pawns. They move it and they defend the other one with the bishop. I pull over to the a file, just getting ready to promote this pawn. They check. I move to e8. They check. I move to d8, knowing I can come to d7 if they take the pawn. So I fork both the pieces. They defend the piece, but I pin the bishop. So the bishop, if the bishop moves, I win the rook, which is what happens. They're attacking my pawn. I push, and they take. Now, just a minute ago, the position was I had 2 rooks and 7 pawns, and they had a rook and a bishop and 7 pawns. And now look at the position. They have 5 pawns and a bishop, and I have 2 pawns and a rook. Apparently my position is still completely winning, and that's only because this king is useless. I've got him trapped by this piece and this piece, and so he's not really able to do anything. And my king can probably come over here and defend well, or can come over here and push this pawn. But the way I play this is kind of crazy. I put the rook on b2, making room for my pawn. They push. And now I make the stupid move, rook b1. Like, what is this move? I just allow the king out. I was thinking I need my rook over here to defend, but I could have just defended. Like, what am I thinking? Like, here all I got to do is push the pawn. Like, yeah, he's got c1, and that's what I was worried about. But if he goes c1, then I just pull back to a2, and the king is still stuck. The bishop's looking at my pawn, but isn't going to get it. And my king can come over here and eat these pawns. So I shouldn't have been so worried about this, but I got really worried. So instead of doing what I should do, I played a rook to b1 so that I can defend this square. But now the king comes in and I'm in big trouble. Rook f1 to attack the pawn. He moves it forwards. And now I have rook f2. And I was so thankful when he moved this pawn forwards. I actually was thinking I'm not going to win this game if he just moves his king. If he goes b2 here, I can never defend this pawn. And I've completely lost. Yes, I can take here, but the game's even. Thankfully, he pushed it. And we were able to check. And the reason this check is so good is because the pawn holds this square and the rook holds these ones. So he has to go this way. And now I sit in this position for probably half an hour. I calculate this like crazy. And this is why I want to show you why this game is so amazing. Like, what, chess is so cool. He's got 3 pawns. And all 3 of these pawns are advancing down this board, ready to promote. And I am scared for my life. But I have big Arnold. And Arnold is ready to promote. And I'm going to make him promote. So I sat here and calculated for so long. I was like, okay, king e6. He can check me. I come back. He can push. I move up. I'm not able to really get anything. This just improves his pawn. This king can just sit here and I'm never going to promote this pawn. This looks really bad. I saw, what about rook here? He pushes. I take a pawn, but then I have to pull the rook back with a check or something. And if I ever move the rook off the second row, the king can come up and eat this pawn. Looks scary. I calculated this for ages and I finally made the move. King c6. And my opponent kind of looked at me like, what are you doing? Like, it was kind of like, he was like surprised. You would think the king needs to go to this corner to defend all these nasty pawns coming to promote. But I saw I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 moves to checkmate. And they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, but they can't promote here because I could use one of my moves to go here. 5, 6, 7, 8. So I saw they had to take more tempo to do what they want to do than what I want to do. And so look what happens. Pawn f5, king b5, pawn h5, and they could have gone bishop e7 here. I would have had to walk around here, but they didn't. Pawn h5, a3, bishop attacks my rook. I move the rook. Bishop attacks my pawn. I attack the king. He goes into the corner. And now I march. But he marches. But I march. But he marches. I attack his bishop. And he cannot defend it. He can't get out. He's trapped. And he gets a queen. But what's better than a queen? Checkmate, boys. I came in tied for second place in this whole tournament. This game, we had a rating of 78.6 and our opponent of a 73.7. But I was overjoyed with this win. I couldn't believe that I got this win, but I did, and it was beautiful. The person who I was tied for second place with was Anthony, the person who I should have beaten in the first game. But I actually won $175 for coming in joint second. So second and third place prize was put together and we split it, which was really cool. The person who won the tournament, I didn't actually get a chance to play because he won all 6 of his games. He played very well and his rating went up to like a 1600. But my rating went from 1211 to 1374. I was really stoked, nearly a 1400 over the board player. And I'm improving and I'm going to get to National Master at some point, lads. It'll happen. Just got to believe in me and I will do it. It's just going to take me maybe 5 or 6 years, but I will get there. I know I'm going to get there. It's going to take me years and years, but I will get there and it'll be a beautiful thing. And chess is a fun game and I hope you're enjoying it as much as I am. But I'll see you lads in the next video. Thanks for watching this one. Bye for now.